All right, it is, see what time it is, 2:12 in the morning, and I am bottle feeding Abigail down here. She's doing great. And I actually wanted to talk a little bit about breastfeeding with this pregnancy, because it was really challenging. Like just some decisions and some emotional aspects of it. And so I did want to share that. With my first, I was able to breastfeed for like just over a year, like 13 months with Charlotte. And it was really difficult in the beginning. You know, the first couple months, the first couple weeks, oh my goodness, so difficult. And I liked breastfeeding. I loved it. I thought it was just so, once it got easier, you know, it was difficult, but I knew like the benefits of it. And I just loved having like that time with Charlotte and like the bonding experience. And it was just, she was just so cute and she loved it. And it was just great, you know, as difficult as it was. And, you know, as time got on with her and I knew I started breastfeeding her less and less. And then the last couple months, it was, you know, I was really only breastfeeding Charlotte once a day and I knew it would stop soon. And then one day it just stopped. She just kind of weaned herself. She was eating lots of food, solid foods by then. And we were only doing one feeding every morning, just for a little bit. And then one day she just wasn't interested. And then I just didn't offer it again because we were, you know, we were about not gonna, we were just ready to stop. And it was like slightly emotional. It's like, oh, you know, I won't do that again until I have another kid. And then with Abigail, I got diagnosed and then, you know, last June with breast cancer. And I remember talking to Paul. Well, first, you know, we didn't know we were pregnant. And so we were talking, and one of the first things I said was, we're probably never going to have another baby. Because they'd already talked to us once they told us about breast cancer. They asked us if we did want more children and if we wanted to do anything to like preserve our fertility, my fertility, because I was so young. And, you know, some of the options and treatments, possibly, they were even talking about hysterectomy at one point. And so they did ask us that question, and we decided that we weren't going to do anything to preserve my fertility, and that, you know, if this is God's decision, then we're just going to, you know, follow this plan. And then found out we were pregnant. So it's like, oh, we don't need to preserve my fertility because I'm pregnant, I'm having a baby. But I also right then didn't even know if I could breastfeed without even doing any research, just thinking about breast cancer and everything they're going to be doing and medications. I'm like, I don't think I'll ever be able to breastfeed again. I was a little saddened by that, but then I also realized, you know, the baby's going to be okay anyway. The baby can be fed with, you know, formula or anything. And so, you know, I didn't think about too much, and I did not let that affect any of my medical decisions. So then when we kind of found out, you know, we had the surgery, found out I didn't need at that point chemotherapy or couldn't have radiation. It was going to be hormone therapy. I asked my doctors if I could, you know, after I have the baby, because they're going to wait a little bit before I start my medication originally in the original plan, if I could breastfeed. And I asked every single doctor, and it was always kind of like, well, it's up to you, you know, where they would like, you know, talk around it and not like have that much information. But I was able to find one doctor, two eventually, that really I felt like gave me a lot of good information to help me make an educated decision about breastfeeding. And you know, they said that the benefits to the baby and the mother breastfeeding, even just for a little bit, as you know, outweighs the risk at that point of like postponing treatment by just a couple weeks. And treatment would have been the hormone therapy, because when you're on hormone therapy, you're not able to breastfeed. And so I like that. And so I decided I want to try and breastfeed Abigail for 6 to 8 weeks. And then I also talked to them about pumping and then get my body ready to be able to store some. Then we're going to figure out what we're going to do afterwards. You know, after like all of my milk was, you know, out of the freezer and everything. So the original plan. So then found out my cancer returned, and I had Abigail very quickly after I found out about the cancer. And then I found out I was going to need chemotherapy and radiation and, everything. And originally I thought I was going to do radiation and no chemotherapy. And it's like, oh, you could actually breastfeed while you're doing radiation, because my good breast, which I'm only able to breastfeed out of one side, it would not be radiated and it wouldn't be affected. And so I was like, oh, I'll get like a longer time. I was like a little excited about that part of it. It was like a little positive. And then it's like, oh, wait, no, we're doing chemotherapy first. I'm like, oh, okay. And when you're on chemotherapy, you cannot breastfeed at all. So I started breastfeeding. Abigail was going so good. I also, in the beginning of February 2021, she latched very well. She was feeding well. My milk came in. And then it was just amazing what your body can do, what God allows your body to do. Even with only having one side I could produce milk on, I was able to produce more than enough to feed her. And then I also was pumping every single time, after every feeding. And I had at one point like 100 ounces in the freezer with an under 2 weeks of breastfeeding and feeding, or pumping and feeding her. And so I was amazed by that. And my doctors, and then I was working with some lactation consultants, and they're like, twin moms do it. They have 2 babies and only 2 breasts, but they're able to feed their both and provide enough. And it's just amazing that your body can do that. And it was hard. It was a lot of work, pumping and feeding, and it was uncomfortable. And I was taking some supplements and like eating certain things. I read a bunch of blogs, and oh my goodness, staying so hydrated. And I was doing really well and excited. And then my doctor called and said, hey, you're gonna do chemotherapy in 2 weeks. And I happened to also have a lactation consultant like video conference like right after I found that out. And so originally I was just had some other questions about things, but then I'm like, okay, how do I dry up in 2 weeks without, getting an infection? 'Cause you don't want an infection when you get in chemotherapy. And how do you, without, being super uncomfortable? And so that's what she was helping me with. And it was very uncomfortable. I'm so glad I talked to her, but I had a hard time with it. I was very uncomfortable trying to like, because I had my body at like max production. I was like feeding her and then pumping 5 ounces after every feeding. So like 20, I got up to like almost 20 ounces a day, and then I just had to like slow that down like drastically, and as safely as possible. And so we ended up, because it was trending towards me having some infections and things, we could not have that. She thought it putting me on antibiotics, but I didn't need that. But we ended up doing another medication I just had to take for 2 days that did help dry me up by like working with hormones and things. And we wanted to do that before chemo started, and so we were able to do that like, I don't know, I took the pills on like a Wednesday and Thursday, and then of 1 week, and then like the next week I started chemotherapy. So another part of the story is that I have a amazing friend who has a 3-month-old who has offered, even when she was like pregnant, I think, she brought it up so many times about pumping for me and giving me her milk. And so I didn't want to put any pressure on her as like a mom of 2, and because it's a lot of work to pump, and do everything else. It takes time, and it's like taxing on your body. And it's a wonderful blessing, but she has been dropping off tons of milk for me. So we bought like a deep freezer, and so the plan is that I'm gonna use that as much as we can, and hopefully make it. 3 months is like amazing. I'm so happy if we could do 3 months. 6 months would be even better. And so we've already ran out of my milk that I had stored up, because she's eating about 4 ounces every 3 to 4 hours. So, like a good like 20-30 ounces a day. And so we're using my friend's milk, and I'm also mixing it with some formula, because eventually she is going to be on formula, and I want to like help transition, and it will help her milk last longer. And I have nothing like against formula, you know, or people who, you know, can't breastfeed or anything like that, or don't breastfeed. I just personally love it. I think it's beautiful and amazing, and I'm glad that I got to have, you know, that time. I tell Paul, I'm like, I technically only like breastfed her like my milk for 3 weeks, and it's just kind of like I put a lot of work into it, and it felt like 3 years. But it was only 3 weeks, but it was worth it. You know, it's nothing compared to 13 months with Charlotte, you know, like that length, but it is just like another sacrifice. It's a beautiful thing. I'm so grateful that I also have, you know, a friend that is willing and able to provide that. It's like a special bond. Yeah, so that's it. I was just thinking about that and wanted to share that.